Hello everyone, and welcome back to the item guide. Today we are going to be starting to knock down the rest of the categories of items in Smite. Today we are going to be looking at offensive focused physical items in Smite, and I think it's appropriate that we start with boots. The first boot to talk about is Warrior Tabby, and Warrior Tabby is simply a stat stick which gives you 18% movement speed and power. This is good for physical characters that are going to be more ability based. For those gods that are more late game focused that are going to be relying on attack speed, there is Ninja Tabby. It also gives you movement speed, but instead of relying fully on power, it's also going to give you some attack speed, which is going to allow you to get more autos off. Now, the final boot that's based around power is Talaria boots. These boots don't do much. They give you a lot of movement speed. Don't pick up Talaria boots. Even on characters like Mercury, which gain power directly from movement speed, it's just not worth it when you compare it to the other boots that are available to you. So now with boots out of the way, let's move into the critical strike items. So let's start with Rage. Rage is an item that is going to give you a lot of crit, and it's going to continue to give you crit, assuming you are going to keep fighting. Do not pick up Rage unless you plan on fighting, picking fights, and stacking this item. Otherwise, it's of no use to you. Deathbringer. This item is a must-have for the crit builds out there because it's going to make your critical strike damage do more. Now let's talk about Malice. Malice makes it so that whenever you do critical strike, your abilities are going to deal 35% more damage. As such, this item is only good on like 3 gods in the game, just offhand. Naja, Serket, and Chiron are the only gods that I have played and used this item on and found success with. Otherwise, don't build this item. Next, we're going to talk about the shurikens, which are both critical strike items, but what they do is a little bit different. They both have very unique passives. So first up, Wind Demon. Wind Demon makes it so that whenever you do a critical strike, you're going to have an increase in attack speed and movement speed for 5 seconds. The increase is only 20%, which isn't huge, but it is super handy, especially on characters like Mercury. Poison Star, on the other hand, when you crit an enemy, they are going to be poisoned, and this poison slows them by 15% and reduces their damage output by 15%. I personally love Poison Star and Wind Demon, and whenever I'm building crit, I typically try to pick up one or both of these items because the passives are so potent. The Executioner makes it so that whenever you are hitting enemies with your auto attacks, their physical protections are lowering. So with every auto, your abilities and auto attacks are going to go through more and more protections. Next, let's talk about Kinsai. Kinsai makes it so that for every auto that you land, you are going to do your auto attack damage plus X% of the opponent's maximum health. That's per auto. Now, that's super good against the tankier team comps that exist in Smite, but I do have to say, is never build Kinsais and crit in the same build. The math doesn't check out. Math that I haven't done myself, but the people I have seen do the math, I trust wholeheartedly. So do not build Kinsai and crit in the same build. Now for Atalanta's Bow. This item makes it so whenever you deal a basic attack, you are going to gain 5% movement speed, stacking 3 times. This item isn't great. Honestly, I can't think of a single character that I pick this item up on a regular basis. The only 2 gods with potential with this item are Kali and Bakasura, but in both of those characters' cases, I build other items way before I would consider building this one. Speaking of items with really niche purposes, we have Silver Branch Bow, which makes it so for every 0.02 attack speed you go over the cap, you gain 1 physical power. Now, for those of you that don't know, the attack speed cap is 2.5, and that is really hard to get to. Like, you have to try to get that much attack speed. As such, this item doesn't really have a purpose on anyone outside of like Apollo and Izanami, which have very powerful and consistent steroids. But in, again, both of those characters' cases, I can think of other items I would rather build 9 out of 10 times. Next, let's talk about Odysseus Bow, and honestly, I do enjoy this item. This item basically gives you 40% attack speed and a really unique Chain Lightning passive that makes it so that every 4th auto you land sends out Chain Lightning that bounces back and forth, dealing 50% of your overall auto attack damage. Next, let's talk about the Mace Tree, and we're going to start with Crusher because it ties into the attack speed that we were just talking about. The Crusher gives you 20% attack speed, some penetration, and some power, but what's really unique about this item is that whenever you land an ability, it's going to create a dot, which is just damage over time, on the target that you hit, which does 15% of your overall power over 2 seconds. Next, we have Jotun's Wrath, which is just a really strong pickup for anyone that's going to want a lot of cooldown reduction relatively early. This gives a significant amount of power and 20% cooldown reduction. It's huge. Next, we're going to talk about Brawler's Beat Stick, which basically just gives you power and penetration, but what's unique about this item is that whenever you are hitting an ability, you are going to reduce the amount of healing that the enemy god that you hit receives by 40%. If the enemy team has a healer on their team, you pick this item up. Contribute. Build anti-heal. Finally, we have Titan's Bane, which is just a really good penetration item for ability-based characters. Basically, when you hit auto attacks or abilities, you're going to ignore X% of the opponent's physical protections, depending on how many they have. Now let's talk about life-stealing options. The first one I want to talk about is Bloodforge. Bloodforge gives you a lot of power, a bit of lifesteal, and a really unique passive in that whenever you get the kill, whenever you are the one to get the kill, you gain a shield around you that is going to take damage and increase your movement speed. It's really good for all-in characters like Thanatos that just want to get the kill and then attempt to get out, because the extra movement speed and the health shield is really going to help you do that. So now we're going to talk about some stacking items, and the point of stacking items, to really oversimplify, is that they get stronger the more minions that you kill. So we're going to talk about Devourer's Gloves first. You can see the stats on screen, but I'm going to tell you when you want to pick this item up. You want to pick this item up when you are playing a late game hunter that is not going to be doing damage through abilities. Characters like Artemis or Apollo. The final lifesteal option that we have is Soul Eater, and Soul Eater is a unique stacking item because you actually don't need to get the last hit on minions for it to stack, you just have to be around them. But what Soul Eater does is it makes it so that 15% of the damage that you are dealing through abilities gets refunded as health, so you get to heal while doing abilities. You pretty much only pick this item up on Pele. I can't really think of another god that uses that item well. But now that we're talking about stacking items, let's finish that up real quick by talking about Transcendence. Transcendence is used for early game ability-based characters. This item is designed to get you ahead and give you the mana necessary to spam your abilities. It also gives you some cooldown reduction, so that's nice. Next up, we're going to talk about Heartseeker, and Heartseeker makes it so that every 5 auto attacks, your next ability is going to deal the ability damage that you do, plus another 80% of your total physical power. This is really good on characters like Neith, because if you build full power on Neith and then ult someone when you have your Heartseeker up, they take like 800 damage, and it's pretty stupid. Next up, we have Hydras Lament, which gives you some power, some cooldown reduction, but here's where things get interesting. Whenever you use an ability, your next basic attack is going to deal an additional 50% damage. Really good item for characters that have good auto attack cancels. Characters like Loki, Thanatos, really good item. And in addition to that, you also gain some mana back, depending on how much you're missing. Now let's move on into the Katana tree, and first and foremost, let's talk about Stone Cutting Sword. Stone Cutting Sword gives you some movement speed and some power. But on top of that, every single time you land an auto attack, you are going to be shredding the opponent's protections and gaining protections yourself. This is a really strong pickup for any auto attack based jungler. Now let's talk about Hastin Katana. Basically, whenever you are hitting an auto attack, you are going to lose the basic attack movement penalty. So you know whenever you cast an auto and then you start moving slower, that becomes a thing of the past if you have this item. But it's super good, right? Characters like Kali, Bakasura, they are suddenly able to rush down and stick to you. Next up, we have Golden Blade, and this item is nutty. So basically, you choose a target and you're auto attacking that target. Anything around the thing that you are attacking is also going to take basic attack damage. This makes characters like Bakasura a force to be reckoned with in solo lane, because if they start auto-attacking a minion, the minions around that minion are also taking damage, and it's really dumb. And the final sword we have to talk about is Masamune. This gives you power, attack speed, and a weird passive that gives you protections depending on how many enemies are nearby. This item's kind of awkward, it never really has a true place. It's great for solo laners that are really far ahead. Now we're going to talk about the masks, and the masks are all about trade-offs. For instance, let's talk about Bombas Mask. Bombas Mask makes it so that you're going to move significantly faster, but you're going to deal a little bit less damage and take a little bit more damage, so it's a trade-off. Another mask, which is only purchasable by Guardians and Warriors, makes it so that your abilities and auto attacks do significantly more damage, but you yourself are going to take way more damage. That item being Ragnar's Mask. I must be getting tired. I don't know why I didn't say that earlier. Now, the final item that I'm going to talk about in this video is Runeforged Hammer. This item makes it so that whenever enemies are CC'd, they're going to take 15% increased damage from you specifically. This does not apply to everyone around you. It's not an aura. It's just from you specifically. The only character I think that gets some mileage out of this item is Ravana. But yes, that is all the offensive-focused physical items in Smite. Next time, I'm going to take a look at all the magical offensive-focused items that exist in Smite, and we'll continue to knock down each category until we've covered every item. Subscribe if you're new. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Have yourselves a casual day.